Right, this video is going to go over and remind you about how to find area of basic figures. We are getting ready to enter our geometry unit, which covers a lot of formulas based on shapes. You will receive a formula sheet, but for today's and tonight's note taker purposes, I will give you the formulas that you need to use for each one. Right, so we're going to practice with area of rectangles, trapezoids, parallelograms, and triangles. And the ones that I don't do with you in the video, you are responsible for doing on your own. Right, so you'll notice that the first two are exactly the same type of shape. When it looks like a rectangle that's been pushed on its side, that is known as a parallelogram, and it tells you at the top, find the area of the parallelogram. So the formula that we use for area of parallelograms is area equals little b times little h, which stands for base times height. Right, and before we do anything further with this, the one thing I do want to remind you of from the past is the definition for area. Area is the amount of space inside the figure. So when we're finding these areas for all these different shapes, we're finding the amount of space inside of that shape. All right, so looking at number one, you see that you have the B is the base. The base is not always on the bottom because depending on what shape it is, there is a bottom and a top, and those are considered your bases. The height is always the up and down piece. The way I like to help you remember with the height is if you take the straight up and down dashed line, it's got a right angle in it, and if you trace over it, it looks like a chair. And the back of the chair is how tall it is. The chair sits on the floor. The floor is the base. So if you can always find your chair, even if it's turned sideways, that will help you figure out the base and the height numbers. And if you notice when you draw that little chair, it looks like an H. Right? So that does help you out in terms of filling in the numbers because they are going to give you extra numbers, as you can see in this first shape, that don't need to be needed. All right, so we need the base and the height. So based on this parallelogram, the chair is sitting on the floor, which is on 15. So you substitute the values in. You keep A equals, and it is capital A because it stands for area. 15 goes in for the little b. And then the height, which is the back of the chair, is 8. And because we're doing 15 times 8, then you can type that straight in your calculator and you end up with area equals 120. Now, with all geometry, you must have units. If they take the time to measure it in a certain unit, you've got to take the time to put the unit back in your answer. So in this parallelogram, they use centimeters, and with area, you always put the little squared in the air. It's centimeters squared. No matter what you use, area has to have squared. And the way I help my students remember it, the word area has 2 A's in it. And that helps you remember to put the little squared at the top of your paper. All right, so don't forget those units because they're going to be changing throughout the use of geometry and all the other formulas. All right, so skip over number 2. You'll do that one on your own. All right, go down to numbers 3 and 4. All right, and number 5 you'll do on your own as well because that's another parallelogram just without a picture. All right, so for number 3, I'm actually going to do number 4 with you, and I'll let you try 3 on your own. Both 3 and 4 are dealing with a rectangle, right, and it tells you the shape right in the problem. So for the formula for a rectangle, it's capital A for area equals length, that is cursive L. You do not print it. It has to be cursive, otherwise it looks like 1. And then W, so length times width. This is the most basic formula you'll have. It gives you the length and the width, even though it doesn't give you a picture. If you certainly want to draw a picture, you can. There's no harm in doing that. But because they tell you specifically what the length is and what the width is, your picture is not going to give you any more information than that. Right? So take your length value and substitute it in. So it's 21.5 for the L, and the width is 12.6. And then just like normal, multiply. Okay, and you do not want to worry about rounding at this point. So you should have come up with 270.9. Again, it's measured in meters, and because it's area, it has to be meters squared. Okay, so unless they tell you where to round to, most times we stay to the tenths place, but if directions tell you otherwise, then follow what the directions say. So you continue with the rest of them on the front. When you switch over to the back, now we're going to get involved with some other shapes. Right? And these top 3 are going to be your triangles. Right? And they're all 3 different kinds of triangles. You've got what looks to be maybe an isosceles triangle at the top, a scalene one at the middle, and then an obtuse triangle at the bottom. So you've got all 3 different versions of triangles, right? But we still have to use the same formula for them. Right? And notice that they all have that right angle piece in there which is that chair. So if you highlight that H, now this one's upside down, so you have to kind of train your brain to go upside down a little bit. There's what's going to help you get through the formula. All right, so I will show you how to do the first one, and then I'll let you try with the other two. All right, so the area formula for a triangle is area equals 1/2 base times height. Right? That 1/2 has to stay there. You can turn it to 0.5 if you want, right? And then just multiply 0.5 times your two numbers, or I'll show you another way you can do this. All right, so when we plug our numbers in, I keep the 1/2 there. The base, remember, is what the chair is sitting on, the floor it's sitting on. So this chair is sitting on 11.8. And then the height is how tall the chair is, and you see the arrow pointing to it, so that's 9.8. Now you have several options when it comes to your calculator. You can type in 0.5 times 11.8 times 9.8 and get your answer, or you can do 11.8 times 9.8 and then cut that in half by dividing by 2. It's up to you. Both will lead to you to the same answer. Right? So you just figure out what works best for you in your calculations and then make sure that the answer looks the way it does. And again, we're not going to round anything because there's no directions that say to. So we should have come up with 57.82. We are measuring in inches, and because this is area, it's inches squared. So I want you to try number 7 and 8, the other two triangles, and see what you come up with. Okay, and then we'll see if triangles are an issue or not. The last two problems are the trapezoid, and a trapezoid has one set of parallel sides. The other two sides are not. Sometimes they're turned sideways and sometimes they are sitting straight up. All right, so for number 9, this is a trapezoid as well as number 10. I will do number 9 with you, and then I'll let you try number 10 on your own. And again, you will get these formulas on your formula sheet that I give you in class next time. Right? But for today's purposes, I'm giving you the actual formula. The formula for a trapezoid is area equals 1/2 of the height, parentheses, B1 plus B2. Close your parentheses. B1 and B2 stand for your two bases. And your two bases, remember, your base is the floor the chair sits on and then the ceiling basically above it. Right? So this trapezoid is not sitting on its bottom. Right? Here's the chair. You need that important piece because the chair is sitting on the floor and the floor has a ceiling above it. All right, so when we go to plug our numbers in, we're not going to use all these numbers. Some of them we will though. You're going to have 1/2. The height would be how tall the chair is. So if you turn your head a little bit, you can see that it's 9 feet tall. And then base 1 and base 2, it does not matter which one you put first, right? I usually put the one that the floor is first and the ceiling second, but it really doesn't matter. The chair is sitting on the floor of 19, and the ceiling above that would be 11. So those are your two bases. We do not use 9.8 to figure out the area of this problem. Now, when you are doing this formula, you do have to follow order of operations. Order of operations says parentheses must go first. So you have 1/2 times 9 times 30. Okay, and then you can go back to doing what you've been doing. And you can take and say 9 times 30 and then cut it in half, or you can do 0.5 times 9 times 30. Regardless, you should come up with an answer of 135. This is measured in feet, and again, it is squared. Okay, so for number 10, even though you don't have a picture, you have all the information you need. Plug them in to the formula, do order of operations, and see if you can come up with the same answer. We will constantly be using these formulas over and over again in class as the formulas start getting more intense and more complex. So know what you're doing with the basic ones so that we can progress into the further ones.